We're gonna have to start again because we're basically waiting for the stream to show up so that I can do the thing. Any minute now. There we go. Okay. All right. And hello, everyone. Welcome to Intent. Good morning. I have this thing in my hair, like just right here, that keeps going onto my face that is driving me insane. Like, oh my goodness. It's like, and it looks weird too. I mean, now I look kind of fashionable. All right, hold on. I had my, all of my windows in like these perfect spots, and then I moved them around because that's what you do right before you go live is you move everything around. Such is life. How was your weekend, everyone? Oh my God, my weekend was fabulous. Making sure, hold on again, that I have sound. That's obviously the first thing you always got to check. Perfect. All right, look at me. Look at me. It's like I do this thing for a living. Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. So, this weekend was intense for me. Like, I mean, it didn't start out that way. It actually started out really chill. Like Saturday, we hung out. Again, it's been, preparing for the conference, doing the keynote, doing all the stuff that I do for my clients, plus also going live, all the things that, we see or that you see on LinkedIn and various things about keeping sort of like a business running at the same time as being a research administrator. During the week, it takes up, I have a fairly good schedule. I clock out at a reasonable hour for me, 4:35 usually. And then, I kind of do some drawing and whatnot. But like the problem with, creativity, drawing, writing, any of those things, that sometimes you got to wait for like inspiration to strike. So like you can be like, oh, I'm going to design a logo, or, oh, I'm going to design a background, or some of the things that I'm going to share with you in a bit. But you got to wait till you're in like the right headspace. It's sort of like if you do a reconciliation or like you're doing a cleanup, so like you've got a portfolio, you've been covering it for a while, and like that there's this series of grants that you need to clean up. And like for you to clean it up, it's not just a matter of, oh, I'm going to clean up year 3 and year 4. There are prior years that need to be considered. I need to think about other grants that are related to it. So it's not as simple as I'm just going to go in and clean up this one project, this UO1 or this, PPG or what have you. It's really about, oh God, I have to actually sit down and have the time to do this. But then also you've got to be in the right mindset, right? So like if I'm sitting there anxious about 800 other things, I am not going to feel like I have the wherewithal, the focus, or even the, I don't want to use the word motivation, but more like the heart. In Urdu, the word is himmat. Like, I just don't have the himmat to do it. It's like, I just don't have it in me right now to tackle something of that magnitude, right? And sometimes when you're creating, it's very similar. So like, even though I had all these things that I needed to get done for the deadline, my spirit was just like, yo, Manessa, that's not how we roll. You're just going to have to wait until I send this stuff down to you. And when I send it to you, then you'll do it. And it'll happen in like 2 hours, right? And I know that. I've done this like 1,000 times in my life before. Okay, so now Sunday rolls around, and I don't know what happened on Sunday, but like it started off with me being like, oh my gosh, I feel like my whole world is consumed by this idea of productivity and capitalism and how much work can I do and how much productivity. And I'm sitting there having this conversation thinking about, I don't know how to live in the now and just find joy in things. And, I'm having this conversation with my wife. And like Spirit suddenly was like, it's time. Right? It's like I imagine it's what it's like, sort of like when I have never had children, but they show you in the movies when your water breaks or whatever, right? It's time, right? So Spirit's like, it's time. Woo! Sunday. Oh my gosh. Syra and I were like, we were in a flurry of creativity. Like, I can't even begin to tell you the flurry of creativity we were in. We were working fiendishly on the just in time section for the pipeline program that we're working on for Stack. And then Spirit came, was like, it's like, all right, now let's do this. Now it's time to write and be creative. So I sat down and like my whole keynote that had been being written in the back of my head all this time, like that kind of spit out. And then I'm going to show you some graphics I created because I was like, oh my God, fiendishly creating. So let me show you some of the things I fiendishly created this weekend. All right, I'm going to show you some Photoshop here. Okay. So that, what you're looking at right now, you're like, what is that, Vanessa? What are you showing me here? Oh, okay. Hold on. I can't move it around. There you go. I'm just going to have to go into the screen. Okay. So what are you showing me, Vanessa? Well, what I'm showing you is, the special handout that's going to be there for it's a superhero creation sheet for all of us. Okay, so this is like a blurry thing. Okay, so we've got that. All right, let's show you another one. Okay, ooh, hold on. This is the other one I made. Look at that. What is this, you may ask? Well, if you are in Region 1, you're going to see this in all its glory on Monday. It's going to be epic. It's going to be so epic next Monday. Not this Monday, obviously. 1 week from today, you will see what this magnificent creation is. Okay. It's really, honestly, I'm so proud of it. I did not do this all in one day. I will be honest. This was actually iterated over the course of a couple of weeks, but I'll tell you, I was starting to panic that it wasn't going to get created and that Spirit was not going to deliver. Oh yeah, I know Spirit. Spirit's like, yeah, I always deliver. Of course you do. Okay. Now I'm going to show you some stuff that's not blurred out. This is fun. Okay. We're going to come back to some of these things later, but I'm going to show it to you now so we can set the stage for the future. And then we'll, okay, so hold on. All right, we're going to go back to this. All right. And look at that. Oh, look at that. Hot Jobs, remote and flex. Look at how cool that image is. I love that image. Okay. So we're going to come back to this a little bit later on, but these are Hot Jobs. Okay. So here, actually, I should probably make this much bigger actually. So these are Hot Jobs that I find on various places that are all remote or flex. There's plenty of jobs. You know how I feel about jobs out there right now, right? Like there are enough remote jobs to go around that, there's no reason for our particular industry why anybody needs to go into the office unless they want to. And there's enough jobs out there that are hiring remote, hiring from out of state, to where a lot of people have more options than the place that they're currently working at, where remote was sometimes being taken away. So I typically will share remote jobs. I mine through them. I find them. I typically do not look at the salary range because at the moment I think the salaries across the country are just abysmally low, and I think that there's like another set of activities that needs to happen for that. So like right now, remote hot jobs are where it's at. So this is the graphic. Keep a lookout on this for on LinkedIn, and when you see this, you'll know that those are going to be the jobs that I've gone through. I've looked at them. What I really just look for is, are they remote or flex? Like there's one today that we'll talk about that's like really interesting. That's not remote, but it is flex, and I found it interesting. Okay, the other thing I want to share with you is this. This is my CFR doc image that I made this week. What I made this for is that we're going to talk a little bit after this about Guild-Trans Attain seminar, which was so good. Oh my God, we're going to talk about it extensively. So we're going to talk about that, but this is what you want to be looking for if you are if you're interested in the changes to the OMB guidance for federal financial assistance, previously known as the uniform guidance. So that was a graphic. This one's not finished. This is my iteration, right? This is like, I get to a certain point and then I'm like, I got to leave it. Once again, this is kind of like reconciliations, right? So if you're cleaning up a really, really, really messy account, sometimes you can only get so far before you kind of need a break. You're like, usually I can only do it for like 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I'm like, I need a break. And typically that break may be like a day or so where I need to like percolate and let the things that I've already done kind of work through my system before I come back to it and say, okay, I'm going to look at this now with fresh eyes. Okay, and then last but not least, this is for y'all at NCURA Region 1. I'm making my slides. Look at that. Here is what I'm putting together for my slides. Clearly, you can tell I like this image. I also, by the way, like reusing template-y things, right? So like I made, this is one of my go-to graphics. that I go back to, right? So once again, like research administration, if you've got a template for a spreadsheet or a budget or something, dude, do not reinvent the wheel if you don't have to, right? If you have a template of some kind, share it for one thing, because everybody needs good templates, but also don't redo it unless you absolutely need to, right? Things iterate and improve over time, but like often we try to create like I'm going to create the greatest spreadsheet that was ever created to man, or woman, or non-binary, or gender non-conforming. And what ends up happening is that we end up putting so much pressure on ourselves to actually deliver a perfect product at the beginning. We don't realize that like our perfect templates actually were built over the course of several years. And then now it looks awesome and it's perfect. But like we remember how hard it was for us to build that thing. So typically I have a deeper script for what I talk about on Intent. I actually have it all written down. It's all, all very thoroughly documented and outlined. But because I had this frenzy of creativity and I was really in a completely different mode this weekend, I actually don't have the script written out. Instead, I was like, all right, well, I've still got lots of stuff to talk about. So what we're doing instead is we are using, so this is my monitors over here. You can't really see it, but it has the list of topics, which I kind of keep running over the course of the week. And then we're just going to talk about them. We're just going to go through them without the script, which, hey, who knows? Maybe it'll be more exciting for us all. Okay. So, let's talk about the OMB guidance for federal financial assistance, previously known as the Uniform Guidance. So if you did not attend Gil-Tran's session on, I believe it was Thursday with Attain, I strongly recommend you head over to Attain's blog. They have the whole thing is posted. They did a really, really spectacular job of providing everything that a person could need after a seminar like that or a session like that in terms of follow-up and additional content and resources. Like, I cannot stress enough how killer that presentation and the follow-up documentation and support has been. Like, darn, like seriously, my thought is this. Look, if Attain, and I have, I unfortunately have never actually worked with Attain on the hiring side, like as like a hiring manager, though I did get something started with a couple of organizations. But I, that's something I usually get going and then, everybody runs with it. But the reason why I'm such a huge advocate for Attain is because this is the kind of care that they show you when they're giving you shit for free, right? Like, imagine what they're doing when you're paying them, right? Like, that's really killer. So anyway, my love bombing on Attain over. That particular session was really, really good, but it did highlight something really clear, which I think many of us may have forgotten from when the Uniform Guidance was first put into place. Oh my God, like over a decade ago. Was it 2013? And that is that first comes the big announcement, right? So you've had everybody's thanked everybody else. And then they've published all of the things. And then you have your experts like Gil-Tran going through it and like really breaking it down and being like, this is what's happening, and highlighting and like really pulling, because honestly, it's a giant document. It is huge. And as I went through it, I was really overwhelmed by what it is that I needed to be looking at. What's important? What do I need to know now? What do I need to know later? What is like, there's just a lot. And this is exactly what we went through when we went through the Uniform Guidance update. And so now here we are again, a decade or so later, doing it again here for the switching back to OMB. Seriously, what's in a name? They ask, what's in a name? Let's give it another name. Let's just go crazy, guys. Let's just name it something else. So what was really great is that you need someone like Gil to kind of go through it and say, okay, these are all the things I'm pulling out for you that you want to flag. And that actually was so helpful, because then I took that and said, okay, now this is my list that I'm working with. And so I've just been pulling out each individual item. So like, here, let's talk about IDC. Here, let's talk about direct costs, right? And then breaking it down into like, okay, how does this apply to us as individual research administrators, right? Because that's the next step, is saying like, okay, now here's this long list, but I'll be really honest, who has the time to read through a really long list, 600 pages, when again, we can't even find the time to stay on top of the 6 jobs that we already have, right? It's just a lot. So the question then is, how can we create a way of delivering the information so that it's like there for you when you need it, like, but in like small chunks? Because like you may not need to know all the things all at once, but the question you may have is like, hey, listen, what are the IDC? How is IDC being impacted, or what about effort, or things like that? And then there's other aspects of it where, an individual change. So there's a whole section in there about fixed cost subawards versus cost reimbursable subawards. And it's actually really interesting in terms of the impact it's going to have on organizations moving forward vis-a-vis administrative burden. But it's also fascinating in terms of the kinds of things we're looking for, the kinds of things we're asking for when we are issuing subawards, when we are reporting on subawards and things like that. And so Syra and I went into this session on the very first session, the very first day, with Jeremy, last name I can't remember, and I'm going to have to get his name, and David No. And they were talking about this fixed cost versus, fixed amount. I need to update my language. It's fixed amount versus cost reimbursable. And it was so deep, intricate, and intense, right? As I was listening to them talk, what I recognized was that implementing some of these things is going to actually be beyond just our having a conversation, right? It's going to be like a conversation that needs to happen at like higher leadership levels with people like David and Jeremy, recognizing the need for infrastructural change in terms of how we approach subawards and ways to make it a little bit less burdensome. But like that's another phase in and of itself as well. So I think what's really interesting now is that now that we have that bucket that's out there, like everything's been spit out there, it's all on the internet. Gil has done his breakdown, which I strongly recommend. I know that NCURA has a session for $135, but I'm going to be really honest. Why would you pay $135 for something that you can do for free? Especially when I don't believe that NCURA trainers get paid for the time that they spend doing this. So like, we pay NCURA, but I don't think NCURA, and that's fine. Right. But in the end, like it comes down to money. Right. And so if you don't want to spend the money, if you want to do it through NCURA, great. I'm sure it will be fabulous. The trainers are fabulous. Everything's fabulous. Nothing bad about that. But ultimately, if it comes down to spending money and you don't want to spend money, just do the Attain thing and then follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll be sharing a lot of that information for free. Now, one of the things I want to recommend is follow me on YouTube, Manessa.tv, and be sure to subscribe. There's a little subscribe button when you go to YouTube, and just click on it and you will be subscribed, and then you'll get notified when I post videos. And basically, as soon as the conference is over, that's where we're going to be diving more into the tactical stuff, because I've been so focused on the keynote and drawing and getting ready and all that. And like, it's actually so fun. I feel like what's interesting is when I was done with yesterday, I did not feel like I had a productive day. That word is not even the word that came to mind. What I thought was I had such a creative day. I had such a exciting day. I had such a day full of expression, but productivity did not come into it. Now, did I produce a keynote? Absolutely. Did I produce a bunch of art? Absolutely. But that's not the thing I was excited about. I was actually really excited about my creativity. I was really excited about the fact that I did things that brought me joy. The irony being that earlier on in the day, like literally in the morning, I had been saying, oh my God, I cannot take joy in anything. I don't know how to just be in the moment. And then I was just in the moment the rest of the day. It was very fascinating. So it just goes to show you that the stories we tell sometimes matter. And then sometimes your body's like, yeah, you can tell whatever story you want. This is how we roll. Okay, so you're going to subscribe to my channel, Manessa.tv. That's going to get you on the short videos and whatnot. And then I also will typically share videos that I find interesting, that are relevant. I have not bookmarked the Attain video on my YouTube because I actually want you to be going to their site. So I'm going to put the link in there for it so that you can go to the site and get all of the things, right? All the things. Okay. So now, speaking of the updates to the OMB, uniform guidance, for now, I'm not going to continuously correct myself. We're just going to assume that we're going to be working in that direction, right? Change in language. This is life. So So part of all of these conversations that we're having are related to creating consistency in paperwork. Also, I just wanted to double check something. I have this feeling every so often that I've like missed something. Okay, good. I haven't. Phew. So you ever get that feeling where you're like, I missed something. Let me double check. Okay. So, is to create consistency, right? We're trying to create consistency across, forms, across agencies, and so on. But what's really interesting is NIST actually is still using their own specific form. So I'm not sure that it has trickled down to them yet in terms of the fact that we're all moving towards a unified documentation on the agency level and on the federal level. So you may still find some organizations are using older forms, have older documentation, have older language, so on. Part of the implementation rollout for this new guidance is that by May 15th, I believe, or somewhere around that date, agencies need to provide the Fed with the list of how are they going to be implementing this on an operational level in their own organization. So you're not probably going to see any of these changes happening right this instant, right? Because a lot of the agencies still have to do it. Now, you may have an agency. Here's the thing. Like with anything, if you have an agency that has someone who's really excited about the idea of these kinds of changes, then that person is going to make it the priority for their agency to be on top of this game, right? If it's, oh God, just one more thing, right? Which absolutely is a thing, then it might take a little bit longer in terms of, okay, we're going to drag our feet and we're not going to give everything to the OMB until like the 14th of May, right? And that's possible too. But I think it's important to keep in mind that there's going to be a spectrum of how these things are applied, depending on the agency, depending on the funding, depending on a great many things. So for right now, there is still plenty of time before some of these things need to be in place, both on the agency and then also on the recipient entities side. So plenty to come. But for now, if you see the inconsistency in documentation, you can roll your eyes, smile, and laugh and say, this is why we have the change. This is why we have it. Okay. All right. So let's talk now. Oh, you know what? Hold on. Do I have my music? Oh no, I don't have my music. Oh, okay, hold on. I did have music at one point where I'd press the button and it would be like, and now the news, right? I'll come back to it. I'll add it. This is actually going to be for hot jobs. And now hot jobs. So let's talk hot jobs. All right, we talked earlier a little bit about my graphic, which is gorgeous. Just FYI, my graphic is gorgeous. But what I would like to share now is what I do every week is I know so many people who are looking for jobs, right? And I also know organizations who are looking for RAs. I like to create matches where I can. Right now, the big match is this. There are many organizations who are making some very questionable decisions about their remote work policies that I do not think are in the best interest of the organizations and most certainly not in the best interest of their employees. And that is this mandated return to work and a requirement to be at your desk. These kinds of behaviors or rules tend to create what we call presenteeism, which is something that we're all familiar with, myself included. And in fact, the more productive of a person you are, like the cleverer you can be at kind of, oh no, there it is. There it is. I'm going to fix this. See, this is great. Look at me. Look at me catching this early. Okay, that's my window capture. That's not what I'm looking for. That's my laptop camera. There we go, face cam. Let's turn it off. Oh, no, I have to do it this way. Okay, don't worry about it. I got this. This is a feature of my, feature, not a bug, of my Apple, which is that I know that there's a way to turn it off. Oh, that's weird. Okay, great. Fabulous. Okay. So, So with a plethora of jobs available that are remote, I wanted to highlight those because those are the ones that a lot of people are looking for. Now, here's the thing. If you are someone who, oh yeah, we're talking presenteeism. Okay, presenteeism. It is the condition or the circumstance by which we have figured out how to make it look like we are working when we're actually not working, right? And the reason why a lot of people do this is one, because they recognize that the 40-hour work week is antiquated, and that it doesn't actually create the most progress. It just creates the most people whose faces you can see, or whose names you can see with a little green dot. It doesn't actually create progress. It doesn't actually create growth. All it does is create burned out people. So, lots of people are figuring this out, right, on an individual level. Now, I was in a meeting once with a VP level person, actually, at an organization several years ago. And they were just fighting with me about this, as we were talking about efficiency and so on, right? They were really, and when I say fighting, for me, I don't have any skin in this game. For me, I am telling you what is going to help your organization, and then you can either do it or not. But they were really, really upset. Like, they were very upset about the fact that I had suggested a flexible work schedule, remote schedule, or so on, right? And it was really, and we had a really long conversation. I couldn't understand where this was coming from, right? Because there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration, right? And it's fine if you don't want to do it, but there's going to be a price that gets paid. So anyway, so we have this conversation, and finally it comes out that that honestly that she did not understand that this idea of being at work all the time and putting in more work and doing all the things was not what created progress. And what was really happening was that she herself was now getting to a point where she suddenly was seeing that she was about to be free. Like, it's that moment. It's the moment right before you realize, okay, and this happens to pretty much everybody, right? Who go into this flex space. So either you come at it from the beginning where you're like, yes, remote work is great, 4-day work weeks are great, you're already on board. The other one is if you have been conditioned like me, 100% conditioned, I'm absolutely, totally there, right? The algorithm said to me, the more hours you work, the more value you have, the more productive you are, the more you get done, the more just so on and so forth. And I had been receiving praise for that for so many years, but I was exhausted and burned out, and I didn't understand how I was going to be able to both continue to show up the way I wanted to show up while also accomplishing taking care of myself, not burning out, and not feeling like I was failing all the time, right? And what I understood was happening in that conversation was she was having that exact same realization in real time while we were talking. And so I was like, you know what, let's just not talk about this for a minute. So we were just in a room, and I said, let's just talk about it. And then we ended up having like the best conversation ever about her own challenges with time and belief about work and value and so on. And by the end of it, she was not only like all about the 4-day work week, she was actually all about full flex, full remote, full everything. She was just like, you know what? This is the way to go, because she had like the resistance was coming from within her because she was letting go of some of these ideas. And so I think one of the things that's happening now in the world is that we're all starting to realize these things. And so some organizations are earlier on in the journey and some organizations are later on in the journey. But the science has already borne out that flex work schedules, autonomy, and a different approach to time and work is what is critical for us to thrive moving forward. Okay, so fortunately, if you're not a member of the Res Admin mailing list, then I'm about to blow your mind with all of the hot remote jobs options that are out there. If you aren't, please join. The link will be in the follow-up, newsletter that comes out, so be sure to subscribe to my newsletter. Okay, so here's what we got here. We've got one in Colorado. We've got so the one in Colorado is manager of service contracts. It's full-time, and it does allow for remote, and the salary for this position, I'll tell you the salaries if they're there, is $86,900, and it offers fully remote. Honestly, I feel like these days remote is like Just I love it. I love seeing more and more remote. Okay, I'm definitely gonna stay off my. I'm done being on my horse about that. You can tell I feel really strongly about that, right? We also have another one, Research Grant Specialist 1, and this is in the University of Louisville. And this one is also, I believe, remote. I usually do a search for remote. Yeah, 100% remote eligible. 100%. So that one is going to be in Louisville, Kentucky. Sarah and I once drove through Louisville before we lost our dad with my brother and him, and we saw the most, beautiful storm. Oh my God, the most beautiful storm. There's also one available at Emory. Oh my God, I'm on an Emory site. I'm looking up for Emory. I can't remember if that one was remote, so let's hold off on that one for now. Okay, there's a really interesting one. If you are a consultant there's actually 3 or 4 more, but I'm not going to go through all of them. So just make sure that you keep an eye out for my hot jobs. This week's hot jobs is actually going to be the last week's listing. Next week's hot jobs will be this week's listings, just so that I can, because that's how I cycle through things. I keep everything on a momentum train. So, but I will keep in mind, join the mailing list. It'll all be there. But there's an interesting opportunity for a consultant. Okay, this is not my wheelhouse, but if this is your wheelhouse, or if you know someone for whom this is their wheelhouse, Jen Stewart has a small nonprofit in Utah who wishes to connect with anyone who has negotiated their indirect cost agreement with the Department of Justice. So if you negotiated your IDC rate with the Department of Justice, you can reach out to her. You can reach out to me, and I'll give you her email address. But if you're a consultant who works with organizations to negotiate their rate with the Department of Justice, also reach out because this might be an opportunity for you. So be sure to check that out. And I was really excited to see that. I've actually been seeing more. I'm finding the Res Admin list lately has become a really interesting combination of deep knowledge, right? So like really specific deep knowledge. And we'll talk about some of those questions in a few minutes. And then jobs, but also opportunities outside of the standard academic research administrator position for like new and interesting ways of applying our skill sets. That is actually the central focal theme. One of the central themes of my keynote is really about the wealth and breadth of knowledge that we bring with us. And over the course of the next several months, I have some deliciously fun things coming up about that. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be really exciting. We also have, who else? CS Teachers. Okay, CS, this is actually interesting. In Chicago, Illinois, completely remote. This is the Computer Science Teachers Association, and they are looking for a grants and compliance manager. The salary on this is $80,000 to $85,000 annually. Okay, so that's one too. So keep an eye out for those. Check out, sign up for the mailing list, the Res Admin mailing list. I don't sponsor it or anything. It's a great list. It's been there for like 1,000 years. I've been on it since I was a wee baby research administrator. It's literally the first. It's like you're born and then they say, join the Res Admin mailing list. And you're like, yes, I will, mentor. And you do. And then you're like, yeah, that's a really, really good mailing list. So make sure you join it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some questions. So I have some questions for you. I'm hoping you'll be able to sort of help me out with these answers because these are conversations really. Because one of the things that Syra and I were talking about earlier yesterday while we were on our separate journeys of creativity is going back to the OMB circular, the OMB guidance for federal financial assistance, is that we talked about everybody's announced it, and here's a 600-page document. And then we talked about, okay, now Gil has done his full list of these are the things that matter, okay? And then there's like individual people and organizations being like, okay, this is what matters to us. And then there is the questions as you operationalize it, right? That and research administrators, we can talk a topic to death. Like we can pick one thing and just sit and hey, let's talk about equipment threshold being $10,000 for 2.5 hours. Oh my God, nothing gets me more excited. I'm not even joking. So exciting. And Syra and I we will nerd out. So by the way, if you're coming to Region 1 and you just want to nerd out talking about like the real deep intricacies of labor cost transfers, come talk to me. It'll be so fun. That's a conversation. Those are conversations in and of themselves, right? And what we learn really is that we don't know the answers to everything. And a lot of times we have these conversations, and from these conversations and disagreements and like, you're right or wrong or whatever, we come up with, okay, this is where we're landing on this, right? But without the conversation, you can't get there. So I typically will say unequivocal things like, this is what I think, right? And I'm 100% sure about those things. Other times I'll say that, and someone will say, well, what about this? And I'll be like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. Right. And let's think about that. Let's workshop it. Let's talk about it. The curiosity, and that's the key, right? The curiosity about how these things will be applied is going to be critical, because that's going to take the anxiety away from it. And because if you dread it, it's just gonna be like, oh my God. And then everything related to the OMB circular is going to be a nightmare. But if you're curious about, okay, what mysteries will arise from this, right? Like Clue, it takes on a much more exciting complexion. So one of the questions that came up recently was, do you add supplemental funds to an RPPR for an NIH cooperative agreement where budget entry is required? And so this was a question that popped up on the Res Admin mailing list, saying that if you're going to be submitting an RPPR for a UO1, where you have a supplement, do you include the supplement plus the dollars, plus the, and now what's really interesting is that I've actually had it, like, it's funny because I remember this differently in that I don't even remember the part where we originally submitted the RPPR part. So when I've done this, the part that I remember was the part later where the grants management specialist came back and was like, okay, I need you to update the budget like this. And then I need you to update the budget like this, right? They had some very specific requirements. And so what I remember about this experience for me when I was submitting these reports was that I did include the supplemental information, but that the NIH was so heavily involved in that whole conversation that the initial budget that included all of the things, right? What I did was I had like the parent supplement and then like the whole thing, almost like you would for like each of the individual projects. So the supplement was sort of just included and then it's all together, right? And then I've had it where they're like, put it all together in one. Okay, great, I'll do that. And then one where they don't. So it really does depend on, but I typically err on the side of including it with the RPPR. And that seemed to be the typical consensus. But the general thought was that if you're going to be including them, make sure that they're clearly delineated as administrative fund, like the administrative supplement funds, and not like bucketed in as just a single budget that says, okay, here you go. At least at the outset, right? If they want you to send back another budget and they say, here, we want you to just bucket it all in one bucket, now send it back to us, then great, they tell you to do that. But typically I will hold them separate. So I'd be curious to know how you do that, right? Because going back to the earlier statement about the conversations, is that over the years, I think like, I remember when they first started doing our PPRs, right? Before, moving them to be electronic from paper. And, or like, where you put them all together in the PDF. And I remember a lot of it, like we were really trying to figure out this is exactly how it's done. But over the years, I think, you get loosey-goosey about it and everybody just kind of has the policies, and some places are really strict and some people are not. And I think the opportunity where you have a new guidance, right, where they're like, here's the new thing, is it's the opportunity to just throw everything out and just say, okay, let's start from scratch, right? So for that question, I'd be curious to know, how do you typically apply that? And then this is one of my favorite conversations. I was having this conversation with somebody at FRA-PRA about waiving IDC or reducing IDC on specific projects. And like the conversation that we were having was basically that, so PI comes to you and says, okay, hey, listen, I want to reduce IDC on this. And sometimes they want to reduce IDC because, the funding is so low, right, that, it's a couple $1,000s, and for them to take the full IDC, it's not even worth it for them to either submit or to receive those funds, because the administrative burden just to deal with it is too much. And then, of course, there's always the, IDC is too high conversation that happens pretty much everywhere. But it is a conversation, because I was talking to, I do a lot of nonprofit work, pro bono work for organizations that don't have it in their budget to have research administrators, but that they need the research administration. This is actually where I started to realize, this is about 2.5 years ago, where I was submitting a grant and I said, this is a big problem because the NIH was opening up all of these new announcements that were for these really tiny community-based organizations, CBOs, to get them funding. So as I'm helping them put these things together, I'm like, how do you know this? Like, like the things that I know as I'm putting together this particular submission, I'm like, there is no way for you to know this unless you have spent decades in research administration to understand how you apply stipends. How do you make this judgment call related to indirects, not indirects, consultants? And some of it, honestly, even with my 20 years of experience, I was like, I don't know how you apply this. And so what was interesting is, so I went back to, having done this many times, I just went back to the agency, I talked to them, and it was evident to me because, again, after having done this for many years, you start to recognize the language that they use when they also don't know exactly how to do what it is. And they're just like, well, we don't know. So we're just going to keep redirecting you into this circle over the course of months until the submission date comes, right? And so ultimately what they're basically saying is you make a decision, you commit to something, right? We don't know what the answer is, and what we're really looking for you to do is do your thing, and then based off of the applications we receive, we'll then, next time we do this announcement, we'll have more guidance. Okay, great. No big deal. We've all been down that road before. But if you don't have a research administrator who knows these things or who has had that experience, then how do you do any of those things, right? Like, how do you know what you can or can't do, or what you can and can't ask, or who you should or shouldn't ask? It's how do you even use Assist? Like, wow. I'm just going to tell you, that is not an easy system. I mean, obviously we've used Assist for years. We know that. But my point is that if you've never, ever done a grant before and you're applying to the feds for the first time, how do you do it without a research administrator, right? Having worked with those organizations and understanding about their challenges and struggles, indirect rates, and so on, the question that popped up in a conversation that I was having with someone was that I don't want to give a percentage of this money that is could actually go to a human being to alleviate suffering as part of this research. I don't want to send that to IDC. How do we adapt for that? And like, there is no, in some, like, there's no dollar amount that says, if it's like in a lot of organizations, it's not based off a dollar amount, because there's so much more to consider, that anything that you waive IDC on then has an impact on your FNA rate negotiations later on. It also, things need to be consistently applied. You can't make arbitrary decisions about, well, this one is, $1,000 for ADHD. So I care about ADHD. So we're going to reduce that IDC. But, I'm not blind. And so for me, that's not where I'm going to put the funds. And then someone else says, well, I'm blind, that's where I want to put the funds. And someone else says, and so it creates a lot more chaos when it comes to reducing IDC. And so I think that, like, there do need to be, like, I think that there are strategic and clever ways of figuring out how to cost share IDC in a way that is compliant, in a way that is thoughtful. But I'm not sure that it's, I'm not, even for me, who wants to get the most amount of money to the people and to the research, I'm not sure how we navigate that space to create equity, create fairness, remove bias, while at the same time maximizing the money that goes towards the organizations that need it. So I'd be curious to know, like, what your organizational policies are on that. Because I know, this is not the first time that any of us are really thinking about this or having that conversation. Every time a PI has a grant that he wants to submit, that is where they want to, or whether they're receiving, that they want to reduce the IDC, this whole conversation happens again, the whole thing. Like, it's not even like it's a, let's do, oh no, not again. Well, fortunately, this was actually a really good conversation too. And my thumbs down thing is like thumbs downing, which is really upsetting to me right now. But it is what it is. So we're going to, oh, wow, look at that. Let's close that. We're going to fix the camera because that makes me sad. Oh, you know what? I have to do it this way. I realized I have to actually unplug it and plug it back in. All right. It's fine. It's fine. We're all happy. We're all happy here. We're a good, happy family here. So, okay. So that, I think I'd love to hear more about how your organization approaches reduced IDC. What are some of the policies? I'd love to, if you have a link that's out there that I can look at. I just in general, I'm interested in this topic. I'm really curious to see how it's applied, why it's applied the certain way that it is, what some of the decisions are that were made, but also, you know, like it's hard for each person to rethink every thought that's ever been had, right? So if we're all collecting, okay, here's all of everybody's IDC policies on, reduced IDC. There are plenty of people who already solved for this problem in a lot of different ways, where basically then you consolidate and you're like, haha, this is a gorgeous IDC policy that is created from a variety of different people's IDC policies related to reduction. So I think it's a really interesting conversation. I guarantee this is not going to be the last time that we have it, but it's certainly one of the more interesting ones that I've had. Okay. It has been a great day. It has been a great morning. I gotta say, I am personally a little bit more excited about not having my script fully written. I actually really liked this. I liked that I just had notes and then I kind of was just like talking here. I would love, I think speaking of iterating, I would very much love to have it so that like we can, have a little cutout in the front and then behind me is like the monitor, right? So like so you can like see, oh, we're going to go through all of the job descriptions or whatever, right? Not job description, but the hot jobs. And like now you're looking at my screen and also at me. So I think like there's a few things I want to play around with to make it a little bit more fun. But if you want to watch me play around with these things and do more lives, like I'm not going to go live on LinkedIn like all the time because LinkedIn's not really that kind of thing. But I really do enjoy the live medium, and I love engaging on lives. Even honestly, if there's nobody there, I just really like being live. So I'm going to move more of this over to YouTube. So definitely make sure that you like and subscribe so that you get notified whenever I go live. And if there's anything you want me to talk about specifically related to the OMB uniform guidance new thingy, send me an email or a text or whatever. Just message me and on LinkedIn and let me know what it is in particular. Like, let me know what questions you have, what you're worried about, what you're excited about, what you're curious about. Like I pick the things that I'm excited about, but the truth is like I really work on my human design is a manifestor generator. So I work really, really well when someone's like, ooh, talk about this. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, let's do that. So absolutely reach out to me. If you are in region 1, reminder, next week there is no intent because I'm going to be doing my keynote. But if you're in region 1, then I will see you at my keynote and you are going to have so much fun. I got the swag bags, guys. I started making the swags. Okay, this is some of the swags. Okay, this is some of the swags. It's my conference survival kit. This is only 2 pieces. Like it's actually got a lot more in it that goes in. This is just like some of it, but it's all arriving over the course of the next week. Wait till you see that keynote room. It's going to be delicious.